So this is not a full review, as you can see by the lack of wear on the coating. There's just not been enough use put to this knife yet for a full review in that manner. But a lot of people seem to be clamoring for sort of a quick overview of this knife, decide whether or not to buy it, or in anticipation of theirs arriving, what have you. So I thought I'd just put this out here for anyone who's interested. I'll make sure to annotate specifications down in the description. There have been a lot of questions about weight and performance and such. But the one spec I will say here is that behind the apex here, stock was about 0.12 millimeters thick. And it was thicker behind the tip. And again, all those specs will be down in the description. So, a quick overview. I'll go with the negatives first. The first thing that happened, it took me about 5 minutes to do to the edge. I must have found a little rock or something, damaged the edge, sharpened it out. I was surprised at the damage. I didn't think, and I didn't find anything that would have damaged it, but I went back and tried to replicate the damage, was unable to, so I'm assuming I just struck something in the hardwood I shouldn't have, like a rock that was able to concentrate the force. I'll put a link to images of the damage in the video description. Somebody, when I posted that elsewhere, said, "What were you hacking? Train tracks or something like that?" And I said, no, obviously not. I've hacked those with bussies, and they have no sharp edges, so they have no way of concentrating that much force on the edge. So they actually cannot damage edges on bussy knives like that. It does take something exceptional to do that kind of damage to it. The other problem I had, and I have another one of these that I can post pictures of if people need to see them. The other issue is around these rivets, there was insufficient rounding. Now the issue, I believe, came from the fact that the countersink is that they used here is only as wide as what you see cut. So the result is they cut down in and then left a little lip where it was just vertical, and that edge was actually pretty sharp, and it was eating my hand. In here it was sort of tolerable, just uncomfortable, but back here on the edge, if your hand is sliding back this way, that was actually quite uncomfortable. So I went in with a rotary tool, rounded all these out, smoothed them out, and that was fine. The grip is not as high traction as other bussy grips. Certainly if you compare it to something like this has a great deal of aggressive traction to it. Some people think too aggressive. This is much more smoothed, and I guess you'd call it magnum handle contoured. It does seem to have eliminated pinky bite, this deeper and fatter, whatever you want to call it. I'm blanking on the word at the moment, I apologize. But this does eliminate pinky bite, or it seems to, that combined with a better formed grip. So it's relatively comfortable to use. It chops well, better than its scrapyard brother, which we'll see in a minute, the Psycho 911. The sweet spot is reasonably forgiving, but further back than you'd expect. A full forward choked up grip puts the sweet spot right around here. And if you're holding the knife somewhat lazily, just letting it slide back in your hand, you'll find the sweet spot is somewhere around here, at least on this knife. So, you know, you're somewhere in this range. Not necessarily horrible positioning or anything like that. It does seem relatively forgiving in terms of where you strike. Granted, I was cutting relatively thick pieces of wood, but again, all preliminary. This knife clearly hasn't seen enough use for a full review yet. And what else is there to say? This is black G10 over muddy. You can sort of see the iridescence of the G10, which is something I like. It's got the rounded spine, so that if you hammer on it, you're not likely to knock pieces out of the edge. So you remove a stress riser, which is a nice feature. It's also rounded down here and around here and over here. Yeah, so it was a nice knife. I brought a couple knives here for comparison. The first is the ash, and while the ash looks taller, it's actually the same height, but because this has a squared off spine, it's perceived as slightly taller. So that's a comparison. Just for thickness comparison, this is a 1/4 inch thick SE5, and you can see this makes it look like a girl knife, which is hilarious. This knife I brought out just for the sake of comedy, because you can fit the entire knife on the blade of this. So you could literally have cut this knife just out of here. But probably its most direct competitor for people who are interested in bussing or bussykin is the Psycho 911 or Sicko 911, however you want to pronounce it. You can see 1/4 inch versus, what is it, 0.32. Again, I'll annotate it down in actual millimeters for real human beings who don't use English system of measure. Height-wise, a little lower. Length-wise, a little shorter. Obviously the handle angle on this is higher, which is something that I like about it. This being straight, it's not a problem per se, but the handle being straight does increase the knife's propensity to try and slip forward, so you tend to require a slightly firmer grip, and of course a more contoured handle, and extra around here, just because it is straight, although it does allow them to get away with cutting it out of a shallower blank, right? Because if you put this at an angle, you'd end up with a different piece taken out of the blank. I don't know actually how Infi comes. It seems like prices are such that you'd guess it comes in relatively long, thin bars, because any time a knife gets deeper, the cost goes up a lot more than it does relative to length. At least that's my perception. Perhaps I'm wrong. Who knows? Just speculation. But there you go. Yes, and somebody's going to chastise me about, well, you know, that's grind height. You can go back and forth on that. But yes, that's a quick overview on this knife. Thus far, I like it. It's good. It seems to do what it's advertised to do. It does have a working sweet spot, which is easy enough to find. And what can I say? I haven't, in hogging on it, I haven't managed to break it yet. Not that I expect to. But there it is. That's your knife porn for this. I hope this is what some people wanted to watch. As always, you know, if you're a hater, go post your hate in the video description. I realize this is not a full or thorough review or anything like that, so apologies for it being relatively superficial, but thanks for watching.